Hello and welcome to another episode of Snakes Territory. I'm Jesse Friedman alongside Jack Sommers, who is sitting in the press interview room at Chase Field. And the Diamondbacks have lost a 3-game series to the Pittsburgh Pirates. And if that doesn't sound bad enough in itself, they lost 10-1 in the finale here on Wednesday. Jack, I know we could probably spend a lot of time debating which loss of this season is the Diamondbacks' worst of the year. And this one was not a bullpen meltdown. There wasn't as much drama, but the Diamondbacks were basically a no-show in this series finale.
Absolutely. I mean, for me personally, although it wasn't as emotionally gut-wrenching as, maybe some of those bullpen late inning meltdowns have been, for me, this was actually the worst game of the season. Their inability to answer anything, obviously with the pitcher that was on the mound today for the Pirates, that had something to do with it, but certainly not all. And they just were not there.
Yeah, I mean, I have a list of Diamondbacks' rough losses this season, and it includes a game where Geno Suarez hit 4 home runs and they still lost. It includes a game where they scored 10 runs in an inning and still lost. And of course, it includes the Tuesday game of this series, which was arguably even more gut-wrenching than a game like this, with the Diamondbacks up 6-0 in the middle innings, and the Pirates score 9 unanswered runs and wind up winning that game. This is just the state of the Diamondbacks right now, Jack. They are now 2 games under 500, and it was Zac Gallen against Paul Skenes in this one today. Skenes was dominant, as you sort of expect, 6 2/3 scoreless innings. Zac Gallen was far from that.
Yeah, my list today is a little bit different. It's not a list of horrible come from behind losses. It's a list of really horrible plays that showed players not being heads up, not being ready, not being prepared. And so for me, that's why this is the worst loss. I mean, I have my little notepad here, and my list is pretty ugly. I don't know if you want me to get to that now or if you want to move on to something else. I mean, we could do a play-by-play, but here's some of the things that I saw today. Naylor failing to run down to first base on a drop third strike with 2 outs and a runner on. With 2 outs, the runner can head down to first. Jordan Lawlar, of course, not having a throwing lane in that meltdown inning for Zac Gallen. The runner may have actually committed kind of an illegal path in the way he rounded that base. They're not supposed to. Torey mentioned that. But nonetheless, Jordan's got to pick that up, that he doesn't have a lane audible and turn around and throw to first base. Alec Thomas had a throw coming into, tried to throw into home on a base hit where he had no chance to catch the runner, overthrew, didn't hit the cutoff man. Corbin Carroll made a misplay, dove for a ball that he should have just been trying to stop, allowed that to get through for a triple. Then he had another ball that he kind of kicked around in the corner and then missed a cutoff man throwing it in. Eugenio Suarez had a bobble of a ball with a runner on third. And, had he not bobbled that ball, it was a chopper, but I mean, like, he definitely should have made the play. Instead, he bobbled it, so his only choice was to go over to first. And that's just the beginning of the list. I just disgustedly threw it aside on the table. The at-bats weren't good. I mean, just, they really had nothing to speak for themselves today. They were flattened by yesterday's loss. It's something we're going to talk more about, the psychological effects of one bullpen loss after another. Maybe these things, almost certainly these things are related. Torey was asked about that today, and he, kind of said, yeah, that's probably part of it. I think he said in the 7th inning, some of these guys look like they've seen a ghost.
That's pretty fair. I mean, I know you were there. I was just watching this one on TV, but the body language did not look good. D-backs players did not look particularly engaged. And on one hand, I mean, yes, you can kind of understand why a loss like the one the Diamondbacks suffered on Tuesday night, like that can kind of weigh on you the next day. But also, this team still needs to go out there and win games. I mean, as hard as it might be, they don't exactly have time to sulk right now. They really need to find a way to work through some of that and play their best baseball. And the Diamondbacks, frankly, Jack, have just been on the wrong side of some history in recent days. I know the Tuesday game, that was their first game since 2009, where they had a 6-run lead and then lost the game by 3 or more runs. And I mean, we've had all the games that they've lost despite scoring 11 runs or more this season. We've talked about the history there. And even, I mean, this Pirates team, Jack, entered this series 6-19 on the road, and they won 2 out of 3 games. And it kind of reminded me of when the Rockies were in Arizona not that long ago. I know the Diamondbacks won that series, but it was still pretty close. D-backs just barely got out of there with a series win with a 1-0 victory in the finale. And of course, that Saturday game was one of the worst D-backs games that we've seen in a long time. It almost feels like the Diamondbacks right now are kind of serving as sort of a get-right team for some of the other teams around the league that are really struggling.
Yeah, I mean, that's what happens when you don't have a bullpen. We just full disclosure for all our listeners, Jesse and I were up at midnight last night debating back and forth about the meltdown that occurred and, what happened with Kevin Ginkel and whether or not Torey made a mistake by not having a couple of guys ready earlier in the inning to get him out of there. And, good points were made all around between 12 and 12:30. I got yelled at by my wife for waking her up.
That's on me, Jack. That's my bad.
But, at the end of the day, Jesse made a great point, and I'm going to repeat your point for you. At this point, Torey's choosing between which reliever he's going to send out to blow the game. And that's true, too. And please don't yell at me or at me on Twitter. I'm not being a Torey apologist. Look, I question him all the time. I did last night. There are plenty of times when I don't agree with something he did. And I'm just going to repeat again. A lot of times I have questions about it, and half the time he tells me something I hadn't even thought of. The other half of the time he convinces me I was wrong, and the quarter of the time he does not, and I think he was wrong. I'm not in the business of calling for people's jobs. That's not my role. I'm a journalist. I cover the team. Yes, I'm passionate about it. But at the end of the day, this bullpen is really bad. It's just not pitching well, and it doesn't really matter who he sends out. He's in danger of losing a lead every time he opens the bullpen door. It's just a reality.
The circle of trust. Yeah.
Yeah.
The circle of trust, as we were discussing last night, has basically reduced down to nothing. And when your circle of trust there's basically no one there, it's hard for at least me personally to get too up in arms about any decision that a manager makes. And granted, the D-backs have had, Shelby Miller's had a really good season. He did look good in the game that he pitched today. Granted, that was his first game that he's pitched in over a week. It's been a while since we've seen Shelby Miller. But yeah, I mean, Shelby, frankly, has not been particularly sharp in the month of May. He's allowed a whole lot of base runners. Of course, blew the save in Los Angeles not that long ago. Jalen Beeks has cooled off. You've got what's happening with Ryan Thompson and Kevin Ginkel right now. Juan Murillo has shown flashes, but then, he has another game like he did today, and you feel like reality kind of sets in there. He just hasn't really put it all together despite how great his stuff is. This is just the reality of the Diamondbacks bullpen right now. I do want to circle back to this game, Jack, with Zac Gallen. I know we've talked about Gallen a lot, and it feels like beating a dead horse in some ways at this point because this doesn't seem complicated. Zac Gallen is walking too many guys, and you saw that very clearly in this game. The Pirates scored against him in 3 different innings. All 3 of those innings began with a leadoff walk that came around to score. This really is not rocket science for him.
Yeah, and I think somebody was asking today, well, do you have the data on how often leadoff walks score? I would encourage anybody that's curious, simply go and Google run expectancy matrix. You get a walk with a runner with nobody out and nobody on to start an inning. that run expectancy is over 2/3 of a run each time that you do that. It's more than a 50% chance that the other team is going to score when you begin with a leadoff walk. Any base runner, it's pretty much in that field, but it's actually slightly higher with a walk than a hit, because a walk generally indicates that the pitcher's having trouble with command, and it might lead to other problems down the line, whereas a hit may have just, come from off a good pitch. So it's actually, the run expectancy matrix is worse when it's a leadoff walk because of what it's indicating might be coming later. So run expectancy matrix, go look it up, folks.
Gallen in this game is final line 5+ innings, as you see here, 6 hits, 6 runs, 5 earned, 3 walks, 3 strikeouts. Sort of similar to his last outing, Jack, where he was kind of cruising along there for a while. He only had allowed 1 run through 4 innings, only, I believe, 42 pitches through those 4 innings, which was pretty impressive. Felt like he might be able to pitch deep into this game. And then came the 5th inning when he needed 36 pitches to get out of it. Granted, he did not get much help from the Diamondbacks defense, as you were talking about earlier. But this has been a trend with Gallen where he can cruise along for a few innings, but it feels inevitable that things are going to kind of get out of hand for him at some point.
Yeah, our good friends over at the broadcast pointed out that through 4 innings, his 42 pitches were a career low. That's how efficient he was being through those first 4 innings. But you start with a walk, then you get an error, and then it ran away from him.
Gallen's ERA at this point is 5.54. Another stat that I picked out on the walks front. Last year, I think we can all agree that Gallen's command last season was not necessarily where you would want it to be. And even last season, in 11 of his 28 starts, he allowed either 0 or 1 walk. Almost half of his starts, it was either 0 walks or 1. And this season so far, Jack, he has made 12 starts and he has 1 game where he has walked 0 or 1. Of course, he had 3 walks in this game. He's had at least 2 walks in all but 1. And oftentimes it's been games like this where it's 3 walks or even more than that.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that was juxtaposed against Paul Skenes.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy is phenomenal. I was asked, who I thought Paul Skenes was a comp to during the game. And I thought about it a little bit. And of course, I went to our trusty Baseball Reference and did a little searching around. But I had a couple of names in my mind. And sure enough, those are the ones that popped up when I was looking at like the best 35 games to start the career, or over years 1 and 2 in my lifetime. And the 2 names that came up were Doc Gooden, for the New York Mets, 1984 and 1985, and unfortunately the departed Jose Fernandez when he came up in 13 and 14. Those 2 guys, along with Skenes, you look at their first 35 starts. Skenes has the lowest of the 3 in terms of ERA. He also has the best ERA plus. And all 3 of them had sub 200 batting average against. Gooden had the most strikeouts. But, I mean, they're not totally comparable statistically because the eras are different. Pitchers pitch more innings per start. But as far as just how dynamic and just how dominating and exciting they are to watch pitch, I know it was, not fun for D-backs fans to see their lineup shut down the way it was. But if you watch this game, somebody just turned out the lights on me. If you watch this game, then you would have seen that Paul Skenes is truly a dominant player. Jesse, you go ahead and talk, and I'm going to see if I can get the lights back on.
This is the disadvantage of having Jack join from the cave that is the Diamondbacks press interview room after hours. Hopefully we can get those lights turned back on. But yes, talking more about Paul Skenes, I just continue to be blown away at how good this guy is at this age. I think he's about to turn 23, maybe just turned 23. And as they were talking about on the post-game show over on the broadcast, it is just wild to me the pitchability that Paul Skenes has. Like, he does not at all. There we go. We got lights back. He does not at all fall in the category of a pitcher who has crazy level stuff but doesn't know how to use it. I almost think that if Paul Skenes had very mediocre stuff, he actually would still be a pretty good pitcher because he just knows how to pitch. And you just see that the way that he works guys at bat after at bat. It feels like every single pitch serves a purpose. He doesn't really ever waste pitches. At least it's very rare. He is one of the most fun guys to watch. And yeah, I know D-backs fans did not have fun watching him today, but maybe somewhere deep down you can appreciate the level of pitcher that he is at this stage in his career.
Well, I'm glad I caught the end of what you just said. Um, and I totally agree. I mean, not saying it's the same, but it's kind of like Pedro, right? I mean, Pedro Martinez knew how to pitch. He was smart. He had a broad arsenal. Certainly, he could bring the heat. He had breaking pitches that would make hitters look stupid, and he knew how to mix everything up. And, Skenes is almost that type of pitcher now. He's got a long ways to go,
Yeah.
to prove that he can stay healthy and produce a Hall of Fame level career. But for me personally, honestly, it again goes back to the era that I grew up in. There's never been anything more exciting than a dynamic, dominating starting pitcher. To me, it's like the coolest thing in baseball.
I am right there with you. Well, we have a lot more to get to, including some potential news on Jordan Lawlar. Jack, I know you talked to Torey Lovullo after the game about Lawlar and his status moving forward. We might have some things to talk about there. We'll also talk about some other storylines surrounding this really tough series loss for the Diamondbacks against the Pirates, and we'll do all of that right after this break.
Todd Father and I are from Jersey, so we're used to, oh, I got a guy. But sometimes that just means when I'm looking for a car, I go to Car Gurus.
Yeah, and I think honestly the best part about this is communication, which we love here in Jersey where we're from. And this is a place where you can get a car. The price drops all the time, and they let you know when your car is ready and when you can get it. The communication part is the best thing for me, Scott.
Agreed. In-depth vehicle reviews. Car Gurus will connect you with trusted dealerships when you're ready, ensuring a transparent and hassle-free buying process with over 4 million listings. They have more car listings than any other major online automotive marketplace in the U.S., so you can find the best deal. Buy or sell your next car today with Car Gurus at cargurus.com. Go to cargurus.com to make sure your big deal is the best deal. That's cargurus.com. cargurus.com.
We are back here on Snakes territory. We have some series takeaways here on the right side of the screen, just capping off what was, again, a really tough start to the week for the Diamondbacks against the Pirates. Something that stands out to me, Jack, is the Diamondbacks scored, I believe, the first 11 runs in this series unanswered. And then the Pirates scored 19 runs unanswered. And then the Diamondbacks scored the final run with the Tim Tawa home run in the 9th inning of today's game. It's not normal. You don't normally see series go that way. But this Diamondbacks team, after the bullpen meltdown on Tuesday night, they looked completely lifeless the rest of the way.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's the way it went down. One of the notes that Jesse has here for our listeners not on YouTube, Ketel Marte was out with the flu for the second consecutive game. He had it's a really bad, head cold type flu, not the stomach flu. And I saw him, come into the clubhouse, and he did not look great. So, hopefully another day off for him, and he'll recover and be ready to start to play again at the National Series. Would have been nice for them to have him in the lineup today. Perhaps, he might have been helped. There were some hard hit balls, by the way, in the first inning or so. I think the first 4 balls hit against Skenes, 4 of the first 5 were hard hit balls, including a couple over 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
If they were able to throw Ketel Marte in that mix, who knows? Maybe they would have been able to get something going.
We have a comment in the chat. Why was Torey not shown on the post-game show? It does happen every now and then, and we can tell you that it's because Torey took a long time to do his post-game press conference today, and that sort of leads us into our next topic here, Jack, which is And this is lovely because both of us have disappeared from the screen as I try to fix that real quick. There I am, and there Jack is. Great, lovely. Um, we're back. This brings us to our next topic, which is Jordan Lawlar, his status moving forward. Obviously, his showing the past couple of games with Ketel Marte out was not great. He is now 0 for 19 on the season with 9 strikeouts. And Jack, sometimes when Torey Lovullo takes a very long time to do his post-game press conference, you and I both know this from experience. Sometimes, not every time, but sometimes it means that he is having a conversation, and it can signal that somebody was sent down. And we don't know that for sure with Jordan Lawlar, but I know that you guys talked to Torey about this after the game, and we'll just say he didn't rule that out.
Yeah, just to clarify, usually we get Torey first. After we speak with Torey, then we walk down to the clubhouse. We were all sitting here. Torey was late. By rule, he's supposed to come and speak to us within 10 minutes of the end of the game. Now, sometimes that's a few minutes late. And it had already been almost 20, and the communications department comes in and said, okay, we're going to do clubhouse first. So we all marched down to the clubhouse. We spoke to Zac, and then we were hoping to speak to Geraldo Perdomo, but we never got that opportunity. And then we turned around and came back and spoke to Torey. So like was just said by Jesse here, usually that means something's up as far as, needing to make a roster move. Now, we don't know that was the case, but afterwards I spoke to him and asked him, in a kind of diplomatic way, I said, is it fair to ask if we might have jumped the gun a little bit or just felt that he was ready when he really wasn't? And Torey answered in the affirmative, like, yes, that's a fair ask. And, clearly things haven't gone quite right for him. And there are some signs that he needs to make some improvements. And then his final words in answer to my question were, we have some decisions to make. And he was very solemn in the way he said it. Now, there has been no official move. Tomorrow's an off day. I just was texted by Michael McDermott that Blaze Alexander is in the lineup for the Diamondbacks, for the Reno Aces. So we don't know that Jordan Lawlar is being sent down, but it does seem very possible that the team made a roster move, and Torey did seem to hint that they have a decision to make with regards to Jordan Lawlar. Recently, Mike Hazen made some comments too in speaking with Steve Gilbert and Nick Piccoro that seemed to indicate that they're not pleased with what they've seen. So, nor should they be, obviously.
Yeah.
He's not hitting. He's not able to handle breaking pitches. He's striking out a lot. They're mostly concerned with the approach. They feel like the approach was out of whack. Mike Hazen even compared it to Tim Tawa and some of the other young players that have come up before. So, it's not looking great for Lawlar's time on the roster here. He's probably going back to Reno. Certainly, I will say that if they're not doing that, they're probably just delaying the inevitable. I don't see him making the improvements he needs to make here at the major league level. And, they can't afford to stick him out there 4 or 5 days a week to help him figure it out. We've talked about that recently as well.
Lawlar in his career, and again, I know we're including 2023 numbers that don't feel all that relevant, but he has played in the majors before, and it didn't go great for him the last time around. He, in his career, is now 4 for 50. All 4 of those hits are singles, 5 walks to 20 strikeouts, a 259 OPS. And yes, this isn't to say that Lawlar could not figure it out at the big league level if the Diamondbacks gave him more opportunity. In fairness to him, he has not gotten a lot of opportunity since he was called up. This has been kind of a weird situation for him. But yeah, this Diamondbacks team is 2 games under 500. They're in effectively the worst position they've been all season, and I don't think they have the bandwidth to try to, force Jordan Lawlar's way into the lineup when they probably don't need to. So we'll continue to monitor that. It's nothing official. Maybe the D-backs made a different roster move. Maybe they didn't make a roster move at all. Although I would be somewhat surprised by that given what you've described. But yeah, this has not been there's no like underlying batted ball data that's saying that Jordan Lawlar is getting unlucky. I think his ground ball rate coming into today was 75%. So it's not just that he's striking out a lot. It's that when he is making contact, it's generally soft contact and it's generally on the ground as well. There just hasn't really been much of anything that we've seen from him offensively where you can, latch onto and say like, okay, there it is. Like that's one of the top prospects in baseball. We just haven't really seen that guy at all. Other than on defense, he has made some really nice plays from time to time. But as you saw in the game today, he's also messed up some plays that are more routine. And it's felt like those things have kind of balanced out in terms of his overall impact on defense.
Yeah, we have by the way, I just remembered to click on mute. We have a comment in the chat. The basketball and football guy supports Jesse's comments just now by saying Lawlar's XBA is 105 and X slug is 121. He isn't getting unlucky at all. He has just been terrible. And that's a fair statement.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens there. Wouldn't be shocked to see the Diamondbacks make a decision on that front. I guess while we're on the topic, I will mention that Blaze Alexander has decent numbers in Triple-A this year. They're nothing super crazy. He enters his game today out in Reno hitting 250, a 393 on base, 408 slugging percentage. That's an 801 OPS. He's been basically just a little better than league average in Triple-A so far this season. His walk rate is a lot higher than we've seen in the past, so you have to like that. But on the other hand, he's not impacting the baseball the way that we've seen Blaze do at the Triple-A level in the past. So, maybe if the D-backs make a roster move, maybe it's not necessarily Blaze Alexander coming back the other direction. Anything else you wanted to add on the Lawlar situation, Jack? No, I think there it is. We did it. Jack forgot to unmute himself. We checked that box.
I had to go and look up while you were talking just to make sure, because I couldn't believe that 801 OPS was actually league average in the PCL, but it is. He's got a 104 WRC plus.
Yeah, basically right at league average. So nothing too impressive, but Blaze has been in the majors before, and unfortunately, Jordan Lawlar has not set the bar all that high at this point. So I don't think the D-backs are looking for someone to step in and, play a whole bunch of games. Just need maybe another option in the infield moving forward. So we'll see what comes of that. Another topic I wanted to discuss, Jack, before we say goodbye in this episode is that of Ryne Nelson. Unless, do we have some other news you wanted to get to?
Yeah, well, it's kind of related to this a little bit. The Diamondbacks made a minor league signing of Nicky Lopez.
Yes, true.
So presumably to add depth to the minor leagues, as Ildemaro Vargas opted out. So that's just another little wrinkle in this whole mix here to keep in mind that the Diamondbacks signed another middle infielder. He plays middle infield and third base for the Reno Aces.
Yeah, that's a great point. He has played some in the big leagues this year. Lopez played 4 games with the Angels, 14 games with the Cubs so far this season, and it's just 28 plate appearances. It's a very small sample, but he's hit 042 with a 220 OPS. So not great numbers from Nicky Lopez, but as you said, he is a depth option now for the D-backs. We'll see where this goes from here. Switching gears over to the Ryne Nelson situation. If we want to talk positives from this series, Jack, one of the biggest ones, one of the few, is that Ryne Nelson pitched really, really well again on Monday. 6 2/3 scoreless innings, no walks, 4 strikeouts. He was in complete command of that game from beginning to end. He pitched well into the 7th inning on just 84 pitches, again, dealing with kind of a diminished pitch count. He was really good, and with Eduardo Rodriguez's return theoretically not that far away, the Diamondbacks have a decision looming here, and I just can't imagine them removing Ryne Nelson from the rotation given what he's done lately.
Well, we know for certain that he is going to make at least one more start.
Right.
Torey hinted this morning and confirmed more or less in the post-game press conference that Corbin Burnes would actually pitch on Sunday, and Nelson is going to be pushed back a couple days, and he's going to pitch on Tuesday in Atlanta, it looks like. So Nelson came out of his 7 up downs, 84 pitches, doing fine. He feels fine. There's no injury concerns. He's just being given a little bit of extra time. I think half of it's that, and the other half is keeping Corbin Burnes on his regular schedule, which Torey mentioned twice. Part of the calculus here was to keep him in his regular turn. It's not the turn so much, it's the day's rest. So Burnes will be pitching on 4 days rest on Sunday, and look for Nelson to go on Tuesday.
I know that Torey was asked, I believe it was pregame Monday, about the possibility of Eduardo moving into a bullpen role. Diamondbacks' depth in terms of lefties in the bullpen is not great. Frankly, their depth in any regard in the bullpen is not great. But he was asked about the possibility of Erod moving to a bullpen role, and Torey said that conversation hasn't even come up at all. Continuing later, for me, Erod's a starting pitcher, and we're going to keep it that way. So, Ryne Nelson's going to get another start. There's not a decision being made here immediately, but it doesn't sound like the Diamondbacks are open to Eduardo moving to the bullpen when he comes back, and as opposed to replacing Ryne Nelson.
Based on his comments to my question on Monday, no, they are not considering him as a reliever. Now, that could change. Maybe the words were for now.
Sure.
Maybe he did seem to kind of back off a little bit, the aggressiveness with which he was talking about the imminence of Rodriguez's return. And he may have gotten out over his skis a little bit. Rodriguez had thrown 3 innings, 55 pitch simulation game, and then he threw a bullpen yesterday. And now he's going to throw an ACL game this weekend. And so that ACL rehab start presumably gets him up to 65, 70 pitches. Will he need another one after that? It looks like it. It looks like he will have another one after that. Torey stated again his preference that guys go out on a rehab assignment, go to Reno, go get in the car, drive to the ballpark, put on the uniform in a locker room together with the other players, and go out and pitch at night. I mean, he feels like that routine is better. But, the players have a right of refusal. I believe it's if they're over a 5-year veteran, over 5 years. I'm not 100% sure on this, but there's a clause that at a certain point, players actually can refuse an optional assignment for rehabilitation. And so with the option to do those rehab assignments at Salt River Fields and the ACL, some of the veteran players may choose that route. So that's we'll see what happens there. But Eduardo Rodriguez, for now, he's still a starting pitcher. The only thing is we know that Ryne Nelson gets at least one more start, maybe 2. Maybe they kick the can down the road. They're not considering a 6-man rotation at this point. That hasn't been discussed or come up. And it doesn't really fit because of the off days. But they could circle back to that as well.
It's really hard for me, Jack, to imagine the Diamondbacks replacing this version of Ryne Nelson with Eduardo Rodriguez. I mean, I know the team might say that Eduardo's salary means nothing to them. And I think we all know that is not true. Eduardo's salary means something because, frankly, if Eduardo Rodriguez were, making the league minimum right now, I don't think we'd be talking about him returning to the big league rotation once he gets healthy. You'd go to Triple-A and try to figure things out, right? So there's certainly some level of seniority. Eduardo's veteran status has a role here for sure. But even given that the Diamondbacks are factoring that in, I don't know how in good faith you can remove Ryne Nelson from this rotation and plug in a guy who has an ERA that starts with a 7. And I know you and I had this sort of debate not that long ago where I was talking about how Ryne Nelson wasn't necessarily a slam dunk and Eduardo's underlying numbers were a lot better than some of the surface numbers. You could kind of talk yourself into all right, maybe Eduardo's true talent level is actually not that different from Ryne Nelson. But given how good Nelson has looked the last couple times out, even this Diamondbacks team wanting to see Eduardo succeed, I just don't know if I see it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, they're kicking the can down the road a little bit.
Yeah.
And pushing out when they have to actually make that call. So when I wrote an article about this, quite frankly, I came very, very close to making the headline, "Are the Diamondbacks slow playing Eduardo Rodriguez's return?" And I got pulled back. I didn't want to be out over my skis with that. And that's, but in a little bit more casual setting here where we're just talking, it does feel like they're more than willing to take their time making sure that he's fully rehabilitated before they bring him back.
Right.
And that gives them a little bit more time to make a decision.
And it makes me wonder if maybe they would go with a 6-man rotation just for a time. If Nelson is still pitching really well and Eduardo is clearly, doesn't need any more rehab or whatever, then I wonder if that's something they would consider, just to, as you said, kick the can down the road and maybe buy themselves a little more time. We saw something similar to that last year when Jordan Montgomery got healthy and the Diamondbacks ran with a 6-man for a little while and eventually came to the conclusion that Jordan Montgomery was going to go to the bullpen and Ryne Nelson was going to take his spot in the rotation.
And that could happen again. Very possible. There could be a trade. There could be another injury. Who knows what's going to happen, right? Who can say?
That's probably a good place to leave this conversation because, we really have no idea. There's a lot of things that can happen between now and even next week before the Diamondbacks have to really hone in on these decisions. So certainly something to keep an eye on moving forward. For all of you joining us here in the chat, we really appreciate you. We see all your comments coming through. I know we've only been able to talk about a few of them. If you haven't already, we'd love it if you would drop a like on this video and subscribe to the channel if you have not already, as the lights have gone off for Jack again. So that's a great thing. We love that. But yes, I'm just going to go ahead while Jack is trying to turn the lights back on in the Diamondbacks press interview room. I'm going to look through some of these comments and see if there's something to touch on a little bit further here. Lieutenant French Toast said, "My vote will always be to let Ryne Nelson eat. If he can push out a quality start for that next outing, there is no reason he shouldn't be part of the rotation." And that's kind of where I'm at with this. I mean, the Diamondbacks, as we've been saying with Lawlar, they're not really in a position to experiment. They're not in a position to put out there anything less than the very best roster that they can. And there comes a point where Nelson is just pitching so well that even if you have reasonably high hopes for Eduardo coming off the injured list, you just can't remove a guy who is pitching this well right now. He's having too big of an impact for the team in the role that he's in. And sure, he could have an impact for the team in a bullpen role as well. We saw him have some impact there, but as a pitcher, you're never going to contribute more than if you're in the starting rotation. So as long as Ryne Nelson is pitching like this, it's hard for me to see him not getting that opportunity. Jack, do we still have light issues over there?
I cannot get them back on, so I'm going to have to unplug and go upstairs.
Okay, well, you know what? We're about to wrap up here anyway, so I think we're just going to have to do the close with Jack sitting here in darkness, which is unfortunate, but I guess kind of amusing at the same time. Thank you again to all of you who've been with us throughout this episode. We really appreciate your time. As I said earlier, drop a like on the video if you haven't already. It really helps out the YouTube algorithm, helps this show get seen by more people. If you're watching us after the fact, we'd also love it if you would leave a comment. We very much enjoy interacting with you in that way. Jack is having a great time waving his phone flashlight in the dark Chase Field interview room. So this is great content right here. But yes, do all of those things. If you join us over on the audio only side, we'd really appreciate it if you'd leave us a rating and review over there as well. That also really helps us out. Jack does a great job covering the Diamondbacks, both when the lights are on and when the lights are not on at Chase Field. He's able to manage it all. You can find his work over at si.com/MLB/Diamondbacks. And of course, you can find us on social media. I am at Jesse N. Friedman. Jack is at ShoeWizard59, and our show is at Snakes Territory. Jack, anything else from the dark caverns of Chase Field?
I can't stop laughing at all the comments everybody's saying. Me sitting in the darkness is kind of poetic for this point of the D-back season, says William Laguna. Thank you, guys. Love you all, man.
Yeah, I think the Diamondbacks after this series, they're like, yeah, no, we're turning all the lights off at Chase Field, just shutting the whole thing down. This building is going to stay completely closed for the next couple of days. But on that note, our next show is going to be a mailbag episode, which will release sometime on either Thursday night or Friday morning. So keep a lookout for that. We'll also be putting out an ask for questions over on our Twitter account. So if you'd like to submit a question for that mailbag episode, we would definitely love to hear from you there. Thanks again to all of you for being with us on this post-game show. We really appreciate it. And we'll be back again with another episode of Snakes Territory very, very soon.